How's it going, everyone? Eulier again. Today we're gonna take a look now at one of the principles, the influence and the goals of Redux, as well as the intent. Why this is important, especially from this course, which is this advanced Redux, where here we're gonna take a look now at this Redux toolkit. We know what actually is this R2 I just want to briefly mention that because the way of how now this Redux tool works is just to guarantee that updating state can be maintainable in React application or in applications where you need to guarantee that the state managing or that the state update can happen in a maintainable way. So RTK or this advanced Redux, right? Course, the goal is to see how now this well-battle test state management library works using now the RTK, which that's one of the reasons why we need to look at this Redux influence goals, designs, and intent. Why this is important? Because we know what is the RTK is all about. What is the problem that it solves? Okay, we can start from that. And then do some reverse engineering in our story as a way to understand this. So the pain points that this RTK solve, Redux RTK, is that the ceremony required, especially when you need to update your states, as well as any time you now is to adding new features, adding new features to manage or update the state in your applications is something that you sometimes need to actually Google at and see what is out there and that kind of thing. And the TypeScript support, it was something horrible to maintain or to keep track of that. So this update state without too much ceremony, it means that because at the end of the day, Redux, the end goal of this is takes inspirations like any other state management library out there from Flux architecture, okay? Where Flux, the idea is to separate the update logic from the rest of the application, okay? So using, and this is where we're going to talk about in today's video. Not only that, but also put at practice by creating our slice and by also creating is now a store in Redux toolkits as a way to understand now what is doing behind the scenes and what are the main use case that it solves.
Now we're seeing
Because this will lay out the foundations when we need to explain that to somebody else, let's say a college or someone that is not on the field, or even to myself as a way to improve my communicational skills. Not only that, but also my technical, which is, okay, you don't only have the ability to talk and express all of that kind of thing, you actually are someone that know what to do and what is doing behind the scenes. Okay. The TL is show, don't tell. Okay. Yeah. In today's video, we're gonna focus is on this Redux goals, design, and intent as a way to understand and pondering that. And then we are going to now create our store as a way to understand what a store is and how by creating all of these slides, it's going to plug into this store. So the introduction here. So with those technical constraints in mind, okay, what is this? Oh, laying the foundation. The intro. I have spent a lot of time discussing Redux use patterns online, whether it be helping answering questions for learners in the reactive Flux channel, debating possible changes on the Redux library APIs on GitHub, or discussing various aspects of Redux in common threads on Reddit on HN. Okay, so Mark, the maintainers, right? The maintainer of Redux, right? So he talk about is discussing Redux user pattern with people and answer the questions, and also is debating change in the Redux library API. Oh my god. In comments on the Reddits. And over time, I've developed my own opinions about what constitutes good idiomatic. Idiomatic, it means that it's independent or is okay. Idiomatic, okay, okay. Idiomatic. Why do you put here idiotismo? That's different. Okay, idiomático. O modismos. Así es como está fuera de nuestro control. Así como rebota la pelota. Así es como rebota la pelota. Oh my god. All of this idiomatic. Okay. Así es como rebota la pelota. We're playing with the language. Anyway, idiomatic, right? We use idiomatic or modism in our everyday life. Another idiomatic is blue blaze, right? Urban Dictionary. This is an expression used by boomers most of the time. Blue blaze, right? Which is an invented place for all people of a place on earth of excruciating hot. Okay. Yeah, like that. What in the blue blaze are you talking about? Yeah, what in the blue blaze are you talking about? What is the hot topic that you're talking about? Jesus. Okay. All right. Hotter than blue blaze. Yeah. It's a way of hillbilly to say hot outside. Yeah, she said he's hotter than blue blaze, but this is a physical place. What is the blue blaze you're talking about? Oh, okay. It's like hell. You know, so it can be things like the devil's mouth. Okay, devil's mouth. In I think it's Pakistan or Afghanistan. I think it's Pakistan. The devil's mouth. Boca del diablo. Pakistan. It's okay. Hell, okay. Hellgate, Pakistan. I think it is. Hellgate, Pakistan. I think though. Um, Health Gate, right? Health Hell Gateway, Hell Gateway, or the Gate of Hell. Okay, the Gate of Hell in Pakistan. I think it's in Pakistan. Turkmenistan, my bad. Well, close. Turkmenistan. Mm. Exactly. Door to hell. Well, gate, door. You get it. Okay. Darvasa gas creator. Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Darvasa gas creator. And now this is a place where the Soviet Union, accidentally or not, they have now an old platform there, and suddenly, well, someone is now Jesus. Someone burned that. Someone accidentally or not make the entire well burn. So yeah, this is known as the door to hell. Okay, holy fucking shit. 400 Celsius, 30 meters. Why am I talking about this, right? Because this is part of the idiomatic topic, all right? But this modism, or this way of refers to something, for example, like blue blaze, which is an expression used for all people. Okay, it's an imaginary place on Earth that say that it's excruciatingly hot, invented by all people. For example, the doors to hell in Turkmenistan, which is a burning well, that in the old Soviet era, intentionally or not, they burned. There was a malfunction there that the entire oil platforms collapsed and it started to burn the gas in that well. So now we have this beautiful sight of this blue blaze on Earth. They're not that wrong. They were not so wrong. They were not so wrong after all. This is something that this gateway of hell was created 1960, 1980. It was set on fire only in the 1980 to prevent the emission of poisonous gas. Oh crap. Relevant records are either absent from archive, classified, or inaccessible. Some local geologists have claimed that the collapse of the crater happened in 1960. A crater filled with water, gas bubbles are visible. Darvas gas crater. But this is another place. Okay. It was set on fire only in the 1980 to prevent the emission of poisonous gas. So to prevent the emission of poisonous gas, but underestimating the volume of the gas. Exactly. Others assert that the site was drilled by Soviet engineers in 1971 and oil filled, but collapsed within days, forming the crater with engineers choosing to flare the crater. Okay. With engineers choosing to flare the crater to prevent the emission of poisonous gas, but underestimating the volume of the gas. Shit. Again, that kind of thing, you know. The mood crater here. Turkmenistan. So this is this blue place actually exists, is Pakistan, known as the Door of Hell, which is a site where now is constantly burning gas, methane, I think it is. But in any case, all of this comes from the idiomatic, right? This mutation we use as a way to reference things. So what constitutes a good idiomatic Redux code, and I'd like to share some of those thoughts. Despite my status as a Redux maintainer, these are just opinions. But I like to think they are pretty good approach to follow. Bling. If you are the maintainer and this is your opinion, and then let me read about this. Redux at its core is an incredible simple pattern. It saves the current value, return a single function to update. It saves the current value, runs a single function to update the value when needed. That's right. So and notify and subscribers that something has changed. Exactly. So this is this Redux pattern, right? It's saying, hey, I'm taking a state, I'm taking actions to generate a new bit of states, and I'm going to notify when that change to everyone who are subscribed to this. Okay. So despite the simplicity, or perhaps because of it, there's a wide variety of approach, opinions, attitudes about how to use Redux. Okay. Many of these approaches diverge widely from the concept and explain for the concept and examples that are in the docs. At the same time, there's been ongoing complaints about how Redux forces you to do things a certain way. Again, conventions and consensus is something that is good when you want to solve a particular problem. Okay, of course, as the time evolves and passes, you certainly realize that this particular way of solving this kind of thing is not giving you the outcomes that you want, and you look things from another perspective. Okay, but so far it actually solves what we want. It actually provides the value that we need. Many of these approaches diverge widely from the concept and example that are in the docs. At the same time, there has been ongoing complaints about how Redux force. There has been ongoing complaints about how Redux force you to do things in such a way. Many of the complaints actually involve concepts related to how Redux is typically used, rather than any actual limitation imposed by the Redux library. So the complaint is about how this weapon, this item is being used, rather than the actual limitation of this tool in it itself. For example, in one recent HN thread alone, I saw complaints about too much boilerplate. Action constants and actions creator aren't needed. Actions contents and actions creator aren't needed. I have to edit too many files to add a feature. Why, again, why do I have to switch files to get to write my logic? In the terms of names are too hard to learn or confusing, and way too much more. But again, this is complaints about how this tool is being used, exactly how the Redux is typically used, and rather than actual implementation or limitation here. So as I research, rediscuss, and examine the variety of ways that Redux is used and the ideas behind shared in the community, I have concluded that it's important to distinguish between how Redux actually works, because people are complaining about the typical use cases of Redux, okay, which is the thing that you need to do as a way to implement this Redux. Implement this simple or perhaps complicated pattern, which is I just want to update the state, and any time that I do that, those who are subscribed to this state, they will receive those updates. So this is the core of this. Okay, it's important to distinguish between how Redux actually works, the ways that Redux is intended to be used conceptually, and the nearly infinite number of ways that is possible to use Redux. So I like to address, so he mentioned is that how React actually works, we know what it is, the ways of Redux is intended to be used, how this tool is intended to be used. You don't put your cell phone on the fridge, for example, or in a microwave, unless you want to do some weird experiment with that and see how that everything melts down. But again, I get it. How this tool is being used. Okay, it is important to know how that works, the inner mechanism, how this tool is intended to be used. Interesting how this tool is intended to be used, and the nearly infinitely number of way that is possible to use Redux. Okay, the mechanism and the intent, as well as how you can use it. I like to address several aspects of Redux uses. Okay. Good. Okay. So here we're gonna outline is that how Redux works behind the scenes. Okay. The inner mechanism, the intent, which is the goal of this. What is the end goal that we want to achieve, and how to achieve that. And that's why, for example, Redux here say, hey, you know what? Yes, this is something that we are going. This is an idiomatic way of doing this. Okay, this force you to do things in this kind of way. Again, you are free to choose your own adventures, and we are talking about here in terms of time. Okay. And if you have the time and the ability, the willingness to go into this adventure, I won't stop you to it. I won't stop you to it. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. So I have concluded that it's important to distinguish between how Redux actually works. Exactly. So it's important here to understand the difference between the mechanism, the goal, and how to use that. So depending on how you use, it's gonna give you is the outcomes quickly or not. But remember, the outcome, the intent is in there. Okay. So I'd like to address several aspects of Redux usage and discuss how they fit into this category. Overall, I hope to explain why specific Redux usage pattern and practice exists. Okay, the philosophy and the intent behind Redux, which is the goal of Redux, all right, as well as explain now is the inner mechanism, the patterns and practice, and what I consider to be idiomatic and non-idiomatic. What is this? Idiomatic meaning or example. Beating around the bush. Hey, wait, what? They are avoiding speaking about something directly. Beating about the College of Liberal Arts. Oh, really interesting. Oh, Touch Cat. Oh, he was staring thoughtfully out of the window and seems to have fallen into a brown study. Carefully, Mr. Justice Warrior removed his false teeth and dropped them into a glass of water. Remove his false teeth and drop them into a glass of water. The shrunken lips filled in. It was a cruel mouth now, cruel and predatory. Hounding his eye, the judge smiled to himself. The carrots are cooked. What the fudge is this? It's idiomatic. They're avoiding to speaking with you about something. Beating around the bush. Hey, beating around the bush. That's the way the ball bounces. That's the way the ball bounces. Something way out of my control. Uh, oh my god! But I'm doing that now in English. I'm doing that right now in English. That's the way how that's the way how the ball bounces. That go Beyoncé. Esa es la manera en la cual así la pelota rebota in Spanish. That's the way how the ball bounces. Oh my god. Okay. Idiomatic expressions. It is raining cats and dogs. They mean it is raining heavily. Okay. For example, in Spanish, we say it is raining. It is. Está cayendo un palo de agua. ¿Qué significa esa vaina? What does it mean? Is that it is raining. It is raining. It is raining an oak of water, right? It is raining an oak of water. Yeah, it is raining an oak of water. Está cayendo un palo de agua. Okay, all of these expressions that you said also in English and in Spanish is like something interesting. It's raining an oak of water. Idiomatic. So the thing here is that what are these idiomatic? You know, is expression that are natural to speakers. Okay, and I want to consider to be idiomatic, natural to speaker, and non-idiomatic use. Okay, natural use of Redux and non-conventional. Idiomatic. Okay, that's interesting. Appropriate style of ARM. Is using and containing. Idiomático. Es el uso natural de algo y no idiomático, no. Pero de los nativos. Okay. It's raining cats and water. It's raining cats and dogs. It's raining cats and dogs. That's interesting. It's raining cats and dogs. And here we're talking about is in Spanish is it is raining an oak of water. Está cayendo un roble de agua. Está cayendo un roble de agua. Okay. But again, the whole point of this is that we are going to look at, according to Mark Blocks, the Redux maintainer, Mark Erickson, the Redux maintainer here of this library, is like, hey, according to his experience and opinion, I want to just look at what is the thing here is that we're going to see what is his opinions in terms of how React works, what is it intends use, what is the end goal, and what is the myriad of use or nearly infinite number of way of using it, right? Okay. So here we're going to look at the patterns or the inner mechanism, which is the pattern in the practice, as well as the philosophy in design. What is the end goal of this? Okay. And what I consider to be idiomatic and not idiomatic of this. It's like, what is the natural use of this? And some no. Okay. Interesting. This post will be split into two parts. In part 1, implementation and intent, like this. We'll look at the actual implementation of Redux, what specific limitation and constraints it requires. Okay, this post will be split in two parts. Part 1, implementation and intent, and part 2, which is another block. Exactly. Okay. Part 2, implementation and intent. We'll look at the actual implementation of Redux, the know-how, what specific limitation and constraints it requires, and what those limitations and why those limitations exist. Then we'll review the original intent. Exactly. Then we'll review the original intent design goal for Redux, based on the discussion and the statement from the authors, especially during the early development process. Okay. In part 2, practice and philosophy, we'll investigate the common practices that are widely used in Redux apps and describe why those practices exist in the first place. Finally, we'll examine a number of alternative approaches for using Redux and discuss why many of them are possible but not necessarily idiomatic, natural uses. Philosophy and variations. Independent slide reducer versus all update together. Action semantics. Reducer variations. Thick and thin reducer. Reducer in action. OOP and OOP and functional programming. Okay. Further information here. Redux in practice, file structure, slider reduce, switch statement, middleware for async, normalize data and selectors. React Redux. Okay, slide reducers, action semantics, multiple dispatch. Okay, but this is not the practice. Action concepts and actions creator. Reducing boilerplates. Flux docs, flux action and dispatcher. Idiomatic reduce. Why use actions creator? Twitter response to no actions creator needed. Okay. Twitter response about that? Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Interesting. File structure, doc pattern documentations, React Redux links project structure, boilerplates and start kits, React component pattern, React state management, a visual guide to state management, React JS prop and state. This is our code for that. Oh, but this is using is the old one. Okay. React and Ajax, React architecture and best practice, Redux architecture and best practice, scaling React JS, and there you go. How to better organize your React app, fractal project structure. Okay. What is this? React Redux links. Okay. Slide reducer, switch statement, middleware for async, normalizing data in selector, Redux, React Redux. Okay, you got it. Slice reducer, action semantics, multiple dispatch. Okay, and there you got it. Okay, I get it. Okay. Good. So, yeah, let's get to this. Lay out the foundation. Examine the three principles. Exactly. Okay. Examine the three. Okay. Let's get into this. The principles. Right. Examine the three principles. Three principles. Right. The three principles. Which is single source of truth. State is okay. Single source of truth. All right. Let's start by taking a look at the now famous 3 principles of Redux. Okay. Single source of truth. The global state of your application is stored in an object tree within a single store, right? It's a single source of truth, which means is that, so the global state, the global state of your app, is stored in an object tree. Is stored in an object tree, right? Within a single store. Within a single store. All right. Why am I doing this? Because again, this is something important to describe when you actually, when you need to solve particular problems on the field, and you say, no. This tool, the aim of this tool is this. All right. This tool actually is something that we need to. All right. A single source of truth. All right. Which is this, the single store object. State is read only. State is read only. Okay. That's right. The only way to change the state is to emit an action. So, right. So the only way to update the state is to emit an action, an object describing what happened, an object describing what happened. Okay, good. And the other is changes are made with pure functions. Interesting. So changes are made with pure functions, the reducers, right? Functions. There you got it. Okay, to specify how the state is transformed by actions, exactly. To specify how the state tree, exactly, to specify how the state tree is transformed by an action. You write a reducer. Okay, or you write pure reducer. Right, which is just a function that actually takes the previous state and an actions and returns a new bit of a state. Right? So far so good. Like nothing too wild here. This is the 3 principles. Okay. Single source of truth. The state is read only. All right. And if you want to make change to that, you write pure functions, which is if you want exactly, the state is read only, and the only way to update the state is by emitting an action, an object that describing what happened, and change are made with pure functions, which means is that if you want to now transform the object tree, you write a pure reducer. So far so good, right? Pretty straightforward, nothing too fancy. We already have that experience of doing that by hand. Okay, in a very real sense, each one of those statements is a lie. Or to borrow the classic line from the Return of the Jedi, they're true from a certain point of view. Single source of truth is wrong because per the Redux facts, you don't have to put everything into a reducer. The store state doesn't have to be an object. If you don't even have, and you don't even have to have a single store. State read only is wrong because there's nothing that actually prevents the rest of the application from modifying the occurring state 3. And chains are made by pure function is wrong because the reducer functions could also mutate the state 3 directly or kick off their side effects. So if these statements aren't entirely true, why even have them? These principles aren't fixed rules or literal statements about the implementation of Redux. Rather, they form a statement of intent about how Redux should be used. This is just describing an intent of how Redux should be used. And anytime I read should is like, no, remove the word should. No, it is. Period. It is. It is or not. It is or not. It is or not. It is or not. That thing is going to continue throughout the rest of the discussion, but because Redux is such a minimal library implementation wise, there is very little that it actually requires or enforces at a technical level. That brings up a valuable side discussion. Okay. Okay. But again, this is the intent. Language and meta language. In Cheng's Lu, React Conf 2017 talk on taming the meta language. Taming the meta language. Oh, here we go. Hey, hello, bro. I'm Cheng Lu.
Testing a few slides. This works. Slight change of plan. Apparently, the creator of JavaScript is among us right now. I can't see you, but can we give a round of applause to the creator of JavaScript?
Really? Renegade?
It's funny because I follow Brendan Ike on Twitter a little bit, and you know what? This is not very polite talking in the presence of creator of JavaScript. You know, I totally forgot I still had gum in my mouth. And at one point he was you know what, honestly, he was a little bit defensive because people were cursing JavaScript, and he was like, yeah, but I only got 7 days or 10 days to create the language. And I was like, this is right. This is we're asking too much from a programming language creator this way. And the next tweet was, Camel wouldn't have taken off at the time when I drafted JavaScript. I'm like, whoa, okay. Thing about the tweet was, Camel wouldn't have taken off at the time when I drafted JavaScript. I'm like, whoa, okay. Think about it. You created a language in 7 to 10 days that you yourself admitted isn't perfect, and now JavaScript is taking over the world, and you really think that old camel isn't taking off because of its language merits, not because of the community. You know? Like we all of us.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's a lot of.
Here programming JavaScript, we know it's flaws, we know it's not perfect, but here we are, a big community, right?
Yeah. Hello.
And this is actually the talk today. This talk, I feel it's bigger than Reason. It's at a React conference, but I personally feel it's really bigger than React too. It's not just about abstractions either. It's about the language and the meta language that we use every day. So Reason is
Okay. Mr. Chen Lu, my respect. Okay, let's get to keep reading about this. He described how only source code is language, and everything else like comment, tests, docs, tutorials, blog posts, and conference is meta language. That's interesting. Oh my god. Okay, exactly. The okay. Ah, here we go. I don't know what when I say here we go, it's like, oh Jesus. Right. Is here comes the joint. Here comes the joint. Okay. So yeah, he described that only source code is the language, and everything around that, yeah, comments, tests, docs, tutorials, events, conference, blog posts, they are the meta language. In other words, the source code itself can only convey a certain amount of information by itself. Many additional layers of human level information passing are needed in order to help the people to understand the language completely. So there are many layers of there are many layers of human information that needs to be created in order to understand this. Okay. James Lu talks then continue on to discuss how moving additional concept into the actual programming language itself enables expressing more information through the medium of the source code without having to resort to the use of meta language. What? How moving additional concept into the actual programming language itself, okay, enable expressing more information through the medium of the source code without having to resort to the use of meta language to pass on the ideas. From that perspective, Redux is a tiny language, and almost all of the information about how it should be used is actually meta language. How it should be used is actually the meta language, which is the reason why actually reading is this blog post. Is the meta language around the actual tool which tells you how to use this. Okay. The language, in this case the core Redux library, has minimal expressivity, and therefore the concept, norms, and idea that surround Redux are all at the meta language level. In fact, the post Understanding Time in the Language, which breaks down the idea of James Lu talk, actually calls out Redux as a specific example of this idea. Ultimately, what this means is that understanding why certain practice exists around Redux and decision of what it is and what isn't idiomatic will involve opinions and discussion rather than just determination based on the source code. Will involve opinion. Okay, he is using now this particular video from James Lu at Meta, okay, React Config 2017, to actually understand that, especially in the core language, which is the actual implementation of the code, everything around that is the meta language. Because we need to have this as a way, we need to have all of this, the comment, the doc, the design, the blog, the tutorials, as a way to understand what this piece of code does. If we can now move that closer to the code, we in fact will not bring opinions on that, we'll bring now more certainties. So how Redux actually works. Before we really get much further into the philosophical side of things, it is important to understand what kind of technical expectations Redux does actually have. Taking a look at the internal implementation is informative. The core of Redux, create store. Exactly. So how actually Redux works? The core of Redux, which is create a store. Function is the core of Redux functionality. If we stripe off comment, the error checking, and the code for a couple advanced features like store, hence, and observable. Here is what we create store. What you define is the state, okay, followed by the functions that actually are going to give you the state. One of them is a subscriber, which is quite interesting, which is say, hey, I would like now to create a closure here. I would like to create now a closure here when anytime we run this function, this subscribe, we're going to pass is the listeners, which is okay, what are the components, the function that actually make use of this state? That makes a ton of sense here. And then I'm going to return inside closure here, which is now the ability to provide JavaScript this way of remember things that are outside of the lexical scope, which is in this case here, right? Yep, like that. And now you say, hey, let me unsubscribe when you run this function subscribe, because I already remember what the listeners are. Interesting here. Interesting, because you can have access to okay, interesting. Not only have access to this, but also to outer global scope, which is now, hey, when you run this, I want you to now, that reference that I have from this data, get me that index and remove it, right? I want you to remove this listener. Okay, I want to splice this. Okay, I want to remove this function or component that are actually reading or subscribing to this listener, and that'll be all, right? And when it comes to dispatch, it's like say, hey, I'm going to run this reducer function here, which is something that they don't define. But yeah, this reducer, we're gonna take the state and the actions, all right? And the outcome of that, which is a new state, I'm going to assign to the state and dispatch this to all of that. So listener for each, I'm going to now is called the listener method, which is, hey, this listener method is like updating is that. Okay. Alright, that's approximately 25 line of code, yet includes the key functionality. It tracks the current state like this. It tracks the current state. Okay. It tracks the current state value and multiple listeners, because that's what we're doing, tracking the state and multiple listeners, multiple subscriber, updates the value, which is here with dispatch, updates the value, all right, and notify the subscriber when an action is dispatched. Yes, and expose the store API, right? But this is the basic of this, the core of Redux Create Store. It's like now internally is doing, hey, I'm going to assign is the state and the listener as a way to keep track when someone wants to access to the state, or a component or a function want to subscribe to this state, So I'm gonna keep track of that listener, and also using now the store or the closure as a way to, when someone actually unsubscribe to this, I want to get the value that I have from there and get the index and remove that. Okay, and when I want to update the state by dispatching an actions, behind the scenes now are actually running as this Redux. All right, and then of course notify the change to everyone that is on the listeners. So notifying the subscribers. So consider all the things that this snippet doesn't include. So here we're talking about closures. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Here, this is the thing that we can actually detect. Here you are creating is a closure. Okay. Consider all the things that this snippet doesn't include. Immutability, pure functions, middleware, because you want this to actually add some middle step or something in the middle between your updating the state. Okay. Normalization is that, hey, this state needs to be in a particular way to align to the React performance. Selectors as a way to say, hey, I want to get now this specific data from that. Thunks is that this value that will be executed at some point in the future. I don't know when that happened, but when that happened, I want to get the value. So it is time independent. So this is the time independent wrapper around a value. Oh shit. Sagas, which is, hey, oh my French toast. Sagas, the TLDR of this is that you want to now provide a series of transactions, and when all of this actually happen, you can now when all of that happen, when all of these transactions happen correctly, all right, now it is done. And if any of them does not, then roll back that. Whatever action type should be string or symbol, or whether they should be defined as context or written in line. Whether you should use actions creator to construct those actions. Whether you should use actions creator to construct those actions. Whether the store should contain non-serializable items like promise or class instance. Okay, non-serializable items like promise or class instance. Whether the data should be stored, normalized, or test as a way to improve the performance of the React applications, because this is one of the way of how you can improve the performance is by saying, hey, creating index or having a normalized data where the async logic should live. In that vein, it is worth quoting diagram above pull request for the counter vanilla example. The new counter vanilla example is aimed to dispel the myth that Redux requires Webpack React. Okay, the new counter vanilla example is aimed to dispel the myth that Redux requires Webpack React, hot reload, sagas, actions, creator, constants, Babel, NPN, CSS model, decorators, fluent lighting, and egghead subscriptions, a PhD or an exceed expectations. OWL level. What in the S is this? Ordinary wizarding level. What the fuck? Harry Potter. Ordinary wizarding level. Ordinary. Wait, in Spanish? Título indispensable de magia ordinaria. Ordinary title spell. Matrícula de honor en brujería. Matrícula de honor en brujería. Matrícula de honor en brujería. Ok. Matrícula de honor en brujería. Ordinary wizarding level, bro. Ordinary wizard level. Wizarding examination authority. Matrícula de honor de brujería. Oh my god. Receiving an O is a transfiguration by attention and passing. Okay. Okay. Tiene una matrícula de matrícula de honor de hechicería, el amigo. No, it is just HTML, some artisanal script tag, and play all DOM manipulation. Enjoy. The new counter vanilla example is aimed to dispel the myth that Redux require Webpack, React, hot reloading, sagas, action creator, constant, Babel, npm, css model, decorator, fluid in Latin hex. No, it's just HTML, some artisan script tags, and a plain don't-all manipulation. Add counter vanilla example. Okay. File not found. Because it's vanilla. Really? Redux counter vanilla example. In the XML, they define now a simple function, a counter, which is this, right? You have a state. If the state is undefined, please, it's not a valid, and all of the switch case for that, right? So the redux.create store, what it's doing is to now providing is this function with that contain is this reducer, okay, which I actually are going to pass that. So this reducer here, you say, hey, now that I get this value here and I want to render this element here, and it's using inner HTML, which is something, as we can see, that is not performing. We prefer to use now is .append child, because here what it's doing is the browser need to parse them. So if you provide now the document instead of a string, it is much more efficient. Okay, store.getState to a string, okay. Oh, interesting. Your passing is now that state as a string. In this case, this is what is needed. You run the render function, which you say, hey, this element, I'm going to now render something here, which is what it's going to have in that state, or in this particular, hey, the counter, render that, and then subscribe that. Store subscriber render. Okay, and then subscribe render, which provide by this store. Redux.create store. You say, hey, this function here, I want you to subscribe to this, which means that anytime the value change, anytime that I update the state here, I want you to now update or call the render and update that. Holy moly. So if we take a look now at code sandbox here, okay, and then we take a look now at this React example here. No, this in fact is the Mutation can be bound canvas bound box. Let me actually reuse some of this. Immutable, yes. Intersection, galleries. Let me actually remove this. WPA performance. Remove this as well. Remove this as well. And this one. Exciting broke. Gifted monad. Let me reuse this. That's right. That's the only thing that we need to. Live versus none. Oh, okay. This is actually as a way to do this. Exactly. If we do this, right? We save this, and then we run this. So say star is running that. Show that, please. Open the preview. Right? Why you sound like that? And then you got it. So anytime I click here, what it's doing is gonna dispatch that event from the Redux store. Okay, the Redux store internally, what it's going to say is, hey, because I already subscribe that function, which is this component, because I already subscribe these functions. Whenever the state is updated internally, I'm going to dispatch this, or I'm going to internally I'm going to now is dispatch this, call this dispatch to say I'm going to update the state, and then I'm going to dispatch this state to whoever is listened to, whatever function is listened to. And in the case of React, they are now React components, React functions. So when you click here, look at all of the inner mechanism that is happening behind the scenes. Increment is auth, okay? Is going to now check that, right? Is you want to now obey your state based on a particular condition, or adding something in the middle, is does that, right? Increment async is does this. Wow. That's a very silly example, but a very powerful one. Okay. 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 And this is the index.html. This is index Redux example HTML. Oh my god, this piece of engineering is something wonderful and beautiful, right? Because all of the things, all of this logic, all of this inner mechanism that is working behind the scenes actually provide you something. And instead of what it's doing is just apply HTML, some JavaScript script, and DOM manipulation. Okay, the dispatch function inside the create store simply calls the reducer function, save the whatever value it is, and return it. And just despite that, the item in the list of ideas are widely acknowledged to be concepts that a good Redux app should care about. Which is, after all, by now dispatching, by now notifying all of these JavaScript functions, or aka React components, they can now receive those updates for that. Both of these constraints have their origin in the original Flux architecture. The quote Flux actions and the dispatcher sections of the Flux docs. When new data enters the system, whether through a person interacting with the application or through a web API call, wherever the input it is, whether it's user input or computer input, that data is packaged into an action. An object literally containing the new fields of data and a specified action type. We often create a library or helper method called actions creator that not only create an action object but also pass the action to the dispatcher. Different actions are identified by a type attribute. When all the stores receive an action, they typically use this attribute to determine how they should respond to it. In a Flux application, both stores and view controls themselves. They are not acted upon by external objects. Actions flow into the store through the callback they define and register, not through settle method. Redux did not originally require the type field specifically, but the validation check was later added to help catch possible typos around import and actions contained, and to avoid bike cheating. What the hell is this? Oh, bike cheating. Bike cheating. This is true, bro. Especially for decision making. Bike cheating, bro. There is a lot of things that are irrelevant. For that. In 1957, Parkinson law observed and illustrated in a common. Bike cheating, bro. Okay, bike cheating. And to avoid bike cheating, to avoid argument about very tiny little details about how to do these kind of things that are not relevant for the overall goal. Regarding the basic structure of actions objects, the built-in utility combined reducers. Okay. And the combined, this is where we start seeing some constraint that more people are familiar with. Combined reducer. Expect that each slide reducer, it is being given will correctly respond to unknown actions by returning its default state and never actually return undefined. It is also expected that the current state value is a plain JavaScript object. That there is an exact corresponding between the key in the current state objects and the reducer function object. Finally, is thus referenced. Okay. Finally, is thus reference equality comparison to see if all the slide reducers return their previous value. If all of the returning values appear to be the same, it assumes that nothing actually changed anywhere and returns the original root state and the potential optimizations. The built-in utility combined reducer. Okay, it is being given will correctly respond to an unknown actions by returning in its default state and never actually returning undefined. Okay. It is also expected that the current state value is a plain JavaScript object and there is an exact corresponding between the key in the current state object and the reducer function object. The original selling point, Redux, exactly, the original selling point, Redux DevTool. The other semi-requirement for time travel debugging is immutability and pure function. If a reducer function mutates state, then jumping between action in the debugger will result in inconsistent values. If a reducer has side effects, then those side effects will be executed there. The main UI binding, React Redux, and Connect. Connect function is where mutation really becomes an issue. The wrapper components generated by Connect implement a lot of optimization to ensure that wrapper components only re-render when actually necessary. Those optimizations revolve around reference equality check to determine if data has actually changed. Specifically, every time an action is dispatched and subscribers are notified. Connect check to see if the root state object has changed. If it hasn't changed, Connect assume that nothing else in the state changed and skip any further rendering work. This is why combined reducer tries to return the same root state object as possible. If the root state object did change, Connect will call the supply map state to props function and do a shallow equality check on the current result versus the previous return result to see if any of the problems stored that data have changed. Again, if the content of the data appears to be the same, Connect will not actually re-render the wrap components. This equality check in Connect are why accidental state mutation result in component not re-rendering, because Connect assumes that data hasn't changed and re-rendering isn't needed. Commonly paired libraries, React and Reselect. Okay, summarizing Redux technical requirement. That say, the commonly used pieces around that core include the Redux DevTool, React Redux, React, and Reselect. Do rely on proper use of immutability. Reselect. The Reselect library creates memoized selector functions. Exactly, it's like, hey, I just want to now store this functionality. It only calculate once. Memoized selectors, functions that are typically used to extract data from the Redux state tree. Memoization normally relies on reference equality. Hey, is this the same object in here? Check to determine if the input parameters are the same. Not the values. Similarly, what React component can implement should component update. Okay. So summarizing Redux technical requirement. That say, the commonly used piece around the core, including the Redux DevTools, Redux DevTool, React Redux, React, and Reselect. Do rely on proper use of immutability, serializable action state, and pure reducer functions. The main application logic may work okay if these expectations are ignored, but it's very likely that time travel debugging and component re-rendering will break. There also will affect any other persistent related use case as well. It is also important to know that immutability, serializability, and pure functions are not enforced in any way by Redux. It is entirely possible for a reducer function to mutate its state or trigger an AJAX call. If it is entitled for any other part of the application to call getState and modify the content of the state tree directly. It is entirely possible to put promise, function symbols, class instance, and other non-serializable values into actions on the state tree. You are not supposed to do any of these things, but it's possible. The intent, okay, alright. But after all, they're just following is this particular principle, which is from the flux, okay? And the idea here is that regardless the input, whether it's computer or human, when you want to update the state, following this particular way of knowing what actions are possible to update the state of your applications using a reducer, it gives you maintainability and predictability. Okay. Okay. It gives you maintainability and predictability. All right. Okay. All right. So, the intent of the sign. Okay. We also look at this very interesting example here, that after all, Redux is just HTML, a couple of script in JavaScript, a couple of JavaScript script, and DOM manipulation. All right. Okay. Okay. Now we know what it's doing behind the scene every time that it's updating the state. It's calling to this function, this is state, and when we update the state, it's gonna call the dispatch function to update the state by using a reducer, and then notify the change to all of the subscribers. Okay. 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 And notify all of the changes to the subscribers. Okay. And notify all of the changes to the subscribers. So Redux influence and goals. The introduction section of in the Redux docs lay out the several major influences of Redux development and concept in the motivation, core concept, and prior acts, and prior art topics. As a quick summary, Redux primary goal is to make state mutation predictable. Remember, we look at the Redux, the principle of Redux, right? The single source is true, the state is read only, and changes are made by pure function. The problem with that is that it's so broad about how you can do that, that when you actually implement that store, okay, which is defining is all of this states, listeners, functions to actually get the state, the listener in fact as a way to make all of these functions or React components to subscribe to these listeners. And not only that, but the when you need to unsubscribe that, you can define that using the closures. And also when you want to dispatch a new actions here, how important is to update the state properly and then notify the change to the subscribers. That's quite interesting. And not only that, there is a lot of concept involved in there. Pure functions, state immutability, sagas, middlewares, normalization, selectors. Jesus fucking. Okay. Okay. Mhm. 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 Mhm.
Environment record is called a closure. And the special thing here, or the special thing about closures, is that the environment record is from a function that has already finished executing, and the execution context has already been destroyed. So now, whenever we invoke inner func, which we can do because it's just invoking the inner function object, a new function execution context is created for inner as well as a new function environment record. And environment records have an internal property called outer env, or outer environment. And this holds the value of the environment property of the function object for which the environment record is created. So in this case,
Mhm. Mhm.
the event loop is a pretty notorious topic in JavaScript.
Mhm. Mhm.
Promises in JavaScript are known to be a little daunting, intimidating, annoying. So today I executed a new promise calling resolve, which is made from an object prop that we pass to resolve. And the executor function is called, and on the first line we have to set timeout. So set is now added to the tab with the string done, and it schedules that handler. Result being that prop string done. Now the nice thing about the fact that it's added to the microtask queue is that in the meantime our script can just keep running. It can just keep performing important tasks, and it stays interactive. Only when the call stack is empty, so when there's like nothing important to do, does it get added to the call stack from the microtask queue. So this means that we can handle the promise result in a non-blocking way. Now another cool thing is that then itself also returns a promise. So besides just creating the record with the handler being results and then it returns result times 2. Result times 2 is 2. 4. If you know how these numbers get locked, the call stack, new promise object is created. Then we have the executor function too, and we don't have necessary memory, but it still has access to the micro stack, logs 3 description if you prefer to just read it. I also added a link to the ECMA spec if you're like me and like.
Mhm.
The
Followed by framer. Okay. Mhm. That's interesting. That's very, very interesting here. That's a very, very interesting here. So the Redux primary goal is to make stable mutation predictable. By imposing restriction on how and when updates can happen. It borrows the Flux architecture idea of separation update logic from the rest of the application. It's like, hey, this is the update logic, and I'm going to abstract that or separate that from the rest of the application. And using plain object actions to describe the changes that need to occur. Development experience features like time travel debugging are intent as key use for Redux. Therefore, constraints like immutability, serializability largely exist to make those development use case possible, which is time travel debugging, as well as make it easy for developer to trace data flow and update logic. Redux wants all state update logic to be synchronous. Okay, yeah, Redux wants all the state update logic to be synchronous, and wants asynchronous behavior keeps separate from the act of updating the state. And this is also interesting. Redux wants all the state update logics to be synchronous and separate from the business logic, separate from the rest of the application, right? So by guaranteeing now how these mutations occur and make it predictable, so by offering is this dev tool, and offering is this the development experience where they can see now how the data is being updated. This constraint or constraints like immutability, which is now this layer of control around how the data is going to, is this layer of control about how change happened to our data. Is this layer of control about, is this layer of control, is this layer of control, which is here, is this layer of control is this layer of control of how data is a layer of control of needed actions needs to occur. Okay, so by providing now an API to do that. So that's what an immutable data is. Is this layer of control, or is this layer of control that is this layer of control that prevents, is this layer of control that prevents unexpected mutations in your data. Makes sense. Okay. So in other words, it's like want to now know when needed change needs to occur. That's the whole point of this immutable data. That's why the immutable data is now in the context of software. It's not something that is freeze. It won't change. In fact, it's just a way of how needed change need to occur with intent. That's why they define this immutable data as this way of that's what they define this immutable data as a layer of mechanism as a layer of as a control layer of how, as a control layer where unexpected mutation of the data what prevents, it's a control layer what prevents unexpected mutation of your data. And by preventing this unexpected mutation of data, Redux is able to provide now this development experience of time travel debugging. with this, using this constraint, the immutability and the serializability. As well as now Redux want to separate is the update logic, make the state update logic maintainable and predictable, okay, by separating this logic, separation of concern, abstraction, by separating this logic from the rest of the application into their own folder. That makes a lot of sense. And Redux wants to be all state updates logic to be synchronous, and want asynchronous behavior keep separate from the act of being updated. Okay, so there's also another distinction here. All of the state must be, all of the updates logic must be synchronous, and asynchronicity behavior must be kept separate of the act of being updated. And Flux architecture proposed by having multiple store of different types, but Redux combine all of this multiple store into one single three-state tree to make debugging, stay persistent features under Redux easy to work with. Single root reducer can make up a several small reducer function like this. A single root reducer can make up a several small reducer function. This allows explicit control on how the data is handled by how the data is being handled. So it allows you to now you can make a single root reducer over a several small reducer functions. Okay. Which allows you to explicitly how the data is handled, and including dependency over ordering, where updating a state requires another slice to be calculated first. Allow you to now introduce this middleware, these small things that it needs to happen here. Design principle and intent. Redux was built as Flux architecture implementation. State update maintainability is a top priority. Actions history should have semantic meaning. Introduce functional programming principle. Promote testable code. Reducer function should be organized by state. Okay. Slide. And update logic and data is explicit. Redux API should be minimal, extensible as much as possible. So now this makes a lot of sense, especially of what are the things that we're doing by using this Redux. Redux, after all, is just an HTML, a small JavaScript in simple DOM manipulations. All right, and it involved all of this concept that we have previously do as a way to provide now better user experience or better development experience, consistency and maintainability, separation of concerns, where we can now actually see what is doing. This particular section doesn't care about what happened here. Separation of concern, and the ability to compose functions or middleware in a single root, and each one of them defined is the necessary step to actually handle that. You can add it, which is defining is the logic to handle data. That's quite interesting as a way to understand Redux. Holy moly. Okay. So that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye bye.